And we're back.
We are back. Hello. Welcome to another episode of Talking Upstream. My name is Zach, and this fellow over here, this is Dylan, obviously, the one with the wide eyes, Mr. Dylan. We are some nobodies, and we're content creators. And if you've never seen this show before, what we do is we just create content with some of our favorite creators. We like to make podcasts. We like to make TV shows. We have a movie in production right now, which I'm very excited about. But yeah, so we just like showing people how we create all the weird stuff that we make. If you've listened to one of our podcasts like Silicon Angels, people always ask us, where do you come up with these ideas? And it is an intriguing question because I can't answer that on the show. Yeah, we wanted to just show people what we do to get from a very empty whiteboard to something weird like a podcast or a movie. But before we get into any of that, Mr. Dylan, how are you, sir?
Doing well today, Zach. Pretty well. How about you?
I am great.
All right.
I'm actually a little beyond great.
Okay.
Because I'm very excited for our guest today. Last week we had a great guest. We had Miss Jess Paul on, who is an amazing actor, amazing writer, amazing producer. She is loads of fun, especially with her foam donuts and everything else. But this week, though, amazingly enough, and I was saying this off camera, I tried to give Dylan a bit of a present. If you watch any of our weird shows or talk or listen to any of our podcasts about us, you will know that one of Dylan's favorite shows of all time is The Expanse. And when we started interviewing creators, we reached out to as many people that had to do with The Expanse as possible. And the first person to write us back very, very quickly, and I'm so excited. Dylan, do you want to introduce our guest this week? Pretty please.
Yeah, so this week we are going to be joined by actor and writer Hallie Lambert, who fair amount of her work is on The Expanse, so she has some other credits we'll probably ask her about as well. So let's welcome Hallie Lambert.
Hello. Hi.
Hi, Lambert. How are you today?
I'm very well, thank you.
Good.
Excellent. Yeah, like I said earlier, we are beyond excited you're here. Thank you so much for being here. We love when we were looking over on the IMDb page under your resume. It's like, wow, this is incredible. And not only for writing, for acting and everything else. But do you want to tell people who watch this and listen to this like what you're the most proud of?
Probably The Expanse, I would say. It's the one that I feel like I've had the most hands-on contribution to from the very beginning. And, it took a long time getting there. Kind of took a circuitous route from getting out of school and kind of went to the acting a little bit and just found that wasn't the place for me.
All right.
It was fun and I admire actors, but I would freeze. I freeze on camera. I'm great on stage, but once I get in front of a camera, I'm just like, what was my life? So that was a short, stint there. But I think finding myself at The Expanse and, like I said, being there from the beginning and really being with the showrunner and the creators and being able to put my 2 cents into things was really an accomplishment, I think, and has taken me into new realms, which has been fun.
Yeah. Had you read the Expanse novel series before you got onto the show? Okay.
No, I hadn't. I hadn't heard of it, unfortunately. I actually... Funny enough, didn't read a whole lot of science fiction. I enjoy fantasy and genre stuff, but and Carl Sagan was always one of the authors that I enjoyed reading. So I enjoyed space and stuff, but I never really had gotten into a lot of real sciencey fiction sort of works. And I was reading scripts for the showrunner of the show. He has been my mentor for years, and we were looking for the next project to go work on. And I remember reading the pilot that Mark and Hawk had written, and I was like, oh my gosh, it just grabbed me. And originally the explosion of the Canterbury was in the pilot. It got changed into a 2-hour episode. And I just remember when that ship exploded, and I was like sitting in my bed. I'm like, Narain, the showrunner, has to read this. We have to work on it, because if we do, then I could get to, work on it too. And, that's what happened. So it was good.
What had you say you had read kind of like fantasy and other sort of speculative fiction? Is there like a series that you would say is probably the one that you go to or might have inspired you more?
Well, growing up, I was always, I liked like the Sherlock Holmes, Nancy Drew mystery sort of thing. But I think later on, that's not really speculative fiction at all. But I think more recently, like the Outlander, the time shifting and that sort of, I love the period pieces, and she's just a great writer, that sort of stuff. It comes to mind. I can't think of anything right now, but
now obviously it's adapted, and if you hadn't read the novels, do you know how did you speaking on the striking a balance between integrating stuff from the novels into the show versus like putting your own original stuff in there in the writer's room, or any sort of like conversation? Was there ever any sort of like balance discussion as to like how you adapt something like that while keeping it fresh for people who had already read it?
That's interesting. I did end up reading the books after, I started working on the show, or even before, when I started getting really excited about it, started reading them. And we're fortunate enough to have the authors of the books in the room with us. So they came on, and I've always heard that can be a good thing or a bad thing, depending on how precious they are about the material, because when you adapt, there are things that need to be changed. There are characters that need to be, combined just for storytelling purposes. I don't know if there was a real discussion about a balancing. I think it just kind of comes naturally in the way of telling the story and adapting it to screen, of the points that are extremely important for the plot and the emotional arcs, and where I think it just kind of comes naturally, I guess. There weren't really conversations.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is interesting because we tried to, a lot of our concepts are really like, hey, here's an idea. Most likely it's a story, which usually translates into a movie. When we tried to write series, we came up with a couple of hurdles, because it's like, you have to write multiple arcs at once. Now, when in the writer's room writing a series, do you have like the entire like series arc, or do you know? Now, I'm not talking about just the Expanse in general, but I guess you have the most experience. But I don't know the story go when to break it up, or do you have kind of cool ideas that you want to throw into it and then you kind of work it into the story?
A little bit of both. Like, we start out, we'll put a big board, kind of like you have behind you, a big board of like the entire season, however many episodes that season is, and have the main big story points and the main big character arc points. And then, so it's kind of like the building blocks or the bones of the season. And then we'll go through episode by episode and kind of flesh it out, knowing the direction you're going. And that's when like the ideas will come up, or we'll throw everything against the wall to see what works and what doesn't work. And there's like no bad idea, because that could spawn a great idea, So that's why I try to remember when I feel like an idiot saying something stupid in the room. It's like, no bad ideas, right? But they get filled, each episode then gets filled out, fleshed out. And then we go and write the outline and the story from there.
One of the things that I love about The Expanse, and Dylan keeps pushing me to watch it, and I'm still getting through. I engage in a lot of content. But one of the things that I found so thrilling about the show is how much just like human interaction there is. And yeah, it is in space, and you're going through a lot of sci-fi things, but there is still human emotions at the center of it all. And when in a writing room, is there certain people that are more like geared towards making sure that conversation goes a certain way, or is it kind of like a collaborative event, or is people more like, okay, you take care of science fiction, you take care of conversation, you take care of the emotion? Like what is the group working like in an episode?
It's extremely collaborative, but there are people with stronger, suits in one aspect versus another. Like I like to think mine is more the character work is my stronger, where all the science stuff I was learning, and it was really fun to learn, but writing a space battle is not my strongest suit. I'll do the best I can, and then someone else can come in and kind of help finesse it a bit. I think, yeah, I like to work with the character arcs and the emotionality a little bit more. But so, like I said, it's very collaborative, and people have their strengths, or some people are just good at it all.
Yeah.
There are those too, which, I want to be that person. But
yeah.
Yeah.
One of the questions I really wanted to ask you, not to cut you off, Dylan.
No, you're good.
I wanted to get this before I forgot.
Go for it.
But do you watch the show back? Do you watch the Expanse, knowing you work on it so much?
Well, I've seen it all. I usually was very excited or very lucky to be able to be through the whole process. So I've seen each episode, a handful of times, going through the editing to the sound mixes, to the visual, the color correction, visual effects stuff. So and learning a lot. So that's, I think, why The Expanse was one of my favorite things to work on, because I got to experience so much of it and learn so much. So yeah, I've seen it. And then the final product, there was a lot of times we did live tweets when it was airing, and you kind of watched again as a group, and we all had a lot of fun doing that.
Yeah. No, my question was, sorry.
No, go for it.
I didn't want to ask this question and then come back that she's never seen it and then the embarrassing stuff. I wanted to preface that. But was there a moment when watching it back that you were like, oh, that was my moment, I thought of that, and that was like one of the very proud things? Was there a moment that you were like, that was 100% me?
Oh yeah, there's been, a number. It's very collaborative, but that's the fun thing, or the little things, the nuggets that you get in there, and that's all 100% your idea. I think my favorite was, this show was my first produced piece of television on season 2, and seeing the little bits of dialogue here and there, the ideas that I had that came up. I mean, it's a thrilling experience to even see your name up there, and to know that you had anything to do with it. Then that happens in other episodes that aren't ones that I actually have my name on, but you'll see in other episodes where it's like, that was my idea, or, and it's fun. It really is.
That's so cool.
Mm-hmm. Cool. So I just have, talking about pacing just a little bit, going back to that conversation, something that my friends who watch the show and I have talked about is that, like, there's this interesting pacing thing where partway through the season, you'll get what feels like a season finale, and then you have another half going on. Now that kind of meshes up with the books, where season 2, which I think one of those episodes is the first one that you really have the writer credit full on. Was there any sort of strange ways that you guys had to finesse fitting those book arcs into a single episode of TV? Or, because when it gets to Amazon, it feels like those midway finales aren't really present in the 2 Amazon seasons that have been released. Talk just on that for a little bit.
If I remember correctly, I think by the time we got to Amazon, we were at about a book a season.
Okay.
Where the first, it's been a while now, but the first season, I think we had started into the second book. I can't remember now. But
I haven't read them yet, so yeah.
I feel like I remember we started into the second book on season 1. Oh, time flies, and I can't even remember now. But I think that's one of the great jobs of the showrunner and the higher ups and the people who really dictate, kind of come in with where the story starts and ends for the season, and we, kind of fall in line, or, work around what their vision is, the showrunner, whoever, this is Noreen for The Expanse. But I think when you are ending one book and going into another, it's naturally going to feel like an ending of a story and a beginning of another. So there definitely is finessing in trying to make it feel like one story.
Yeah.
I don't know if that answers your question, but
I mean, kind of, just in order to like get those arcs kind of going in a place that feels natural to the length of the season, I think is probably statement enough to it, especially because the books for The Expanse are so like pretty thick, which I think is a symptom of them. I think the writers used to be like personal assistants to George R.R. Martin, or at least one of them did.
Ty. Yeah.
Which is something because their output has dwarfed his in the past 10 years, but
They
I'm not gonna
are
be mad
quick
about
writers.
that. Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
No, go for it.
I was going to say, I think it's interesting to marry books together and try to make it feel seamless, but also it's interesting bringing in, like, there were characters that are in one book and not in the next book that become fan favorites. So we have to develop entire storylines for them and bring them into the season, because you don't want to lose these favorite characters like Avasarala and Bobby, and even Drummer. Yeah.
Well, I imagine it's kind of difficult to pace those stories out, especially when the characters are separated by such distances as they can be in outer space. Did you have any sort of weird time dilation where you had to be like, we're going to have to float Avasarala a little bit? Like, it doesn't make sense that she got all this information as soon as she did, or were there any kind of moments you had to kind of, cheese it?
Oh yeah, I mean, definitely. We do our best to try and stay as close to time delays and show time delays, but there are times where you gotta finesse it a little bit, and it is one of the things of like no sound in space. It's like, well, it would be very boring to watch a no sound. Like, it's just not gonna have the same feeling if there's no sound, even though I know technically you're not going to hear it. So finessing those things are, I think, just part of the storytelling.
Mm-hmm. Is that also one of the things that I've also kind of talked about with this is like some of the technology, it feels very, very kind of reasonable that the technology's advanced this far, but a lot of things I've seen point out certain things like automation or drones are such a lack in. Was there a conscious conversation about not including certain aspects of technology for the story's sake?
Well, I think I've heard from, the book writers or showrunner and everybody that, because this question has been asked before, and it's not that it's not there. It's just, it's commonplace. Like most people don't go walking around saying, this is my cell phone. It connects me to people across, the world or anything like that. It's just there. Like we have drones floating in the background or flying in the background, or there's robots. They're just not talked about because they're just part of the world.
Mm-hmm.
So
I told you.
Yeah.
Whatever, Zach.
You brought up something interesting early. You said that a lot of, well, not a lot, but sometimes the fan comments will kind of alter how the story goes. If fans are certain, like behind a certain character, you kind of got to write them in. How much do the fans play into how the story does go?
I imagine in some shows maybe quite a bit. I don't know. I mean, when I think a fan favorite character also becomes, you say, a studio favorite character or someone who kind of dictates more. The storyline itself the fans influence it, but like small, like if a character, no, don't kill them off. I don't think if it's, conducive to the story, we're still going to kill them off. So I don't know. That's a good, tough question. They influence it, but
because there
not for minute things.
Yeah, there has to be like a weird rift between what people want to engage with versus what a creator wants to write. And when looking at movies like the Snyder Cut and even Sonic the Hedgehog, where fans can really push over studios and have certain things happen, I was always curious, like, if there is a lot of push from fans, if that can change a writer's point of view or like how that story could alter. That's always been kind of curious to me.
I'm sure it can change a writer's point of view or a showrunner's point of view, or if there is really an outpouring of, love for a character or something like that, then, it might influence, like I said, bringing that character up or making more of a story for them. It wasn't super influenced on The Expanse because, there were books, and so there's only so much you could do. But I think the love of Drummer really did, and just how great she was, brought up her character storyline quite a bit.
Now, when in like the writing room and you're working on The Expanse and you have, you're a very creative person, you probably have a lot of really interesting ideas. How do you know when to push certain ideas towards, say, The Expanse or versus like other things that you need to work on later? How do you do you have a method of how you separate all of your unique ideas?
I'm terrible at it. When I get into something and I'm like, really, like, I put everything into it. So I was on this Expanse for 6 years, 5 seasons, and it's about 6 years. And I really didn't write much for myself. Like, it really work on many. I had some ideas, and I would still do my morning pages every day and do a little writing, and I'd have ideas that I would jot down. But I didn't really write any scripts other than The Expanse, because I just became so, like, that was my entire world. And so I'm working on being better about, like, okay, I've got to switch my brain and work on this. And, otherwise I'm not going to have a portfolio or anything else that I want to get made. So
do you have like a daily or like weekly word goal, or how do you kind of divide your writing time between your projects?
I've heard word goals are great, or like page goals or whatever. I'm not good at that either. I do write every morning in my morning pages, which is just brain drain, obviously, to kind of get me going, which I find very useful, because oftentimes I'll just, even in my brain drain, just start thinking of what I'm going to be working on that day, which kind of gets me going. There will be days where, other than that I don't really write much, but I'm just processing and thinking and marinating on an idea. I'm like, I don't know what to write yet, but it's there. I can feel it in the periphery of my brain. I just don't know what it is yet. So I kind of will do other things around the house and let it stew a little bit, and then usually get into writing. So I usually get through, once I get an idea and have like a brief outline, it doesn't take me too long. I'm pretty quick at getting a script out. It's pretty quick.
Is there any way you might want to expand on just your process for actually putting an idea out? Because we talk a lot about, like, where do you get your ideas? And I've never found that question to be particularly helpful for people who ask it, because it's like the answer is almost inevitably just like around the ideas. I see something and it's an idea. But the challenging part is actually putting that idea from here onto the page. Do you have any particular kind of method that you go back to?
I lay in my bed and stare at the ceiling like this a lot. And while it looks like I'm in a coffin or like I'm dead, my boyfriend laughs at me, because he's like, he'll be going to sleep next to me, and I'll just be staring for a couple hours while I'm thinking through story ideas or like whatever the new thing I might be working on at the time. And he's like, you look like you're dead, just so creepy staring at the ceiling. I'm like, it's my process. So yeah, I just do a lot of staring off, thinking, and research when if there's something that the idea warrants a lot of research. I worked on something which was based on a true story that happened where I grew up. So it took a lot of research. So researching during the day, staring up the ceiling at night, writing down ideas. That's kind of the process.
You have a lot of amazing credits on your IMDb page, from like writing to producing, executive credit to acting. What would you say is like your favorite thing? What of all the things you've done behind the scenes or in front of the scenes?
Oh, my favorite thing that I've done. Well, I'll probably stick with the writing side of things, because acting was very fun. Like, I had a lot of fun. I did mostly background work and like little one-liner things here or there, which was fun. And I met a lot of really great people, and was also nerve-wracking because, like I said, I get kind of frozen in front of cameras. But I'm going to come back to The Expanse again. Almost Human was a really fun. I didn't get as much of experience. It was shorter lived. Like, we had a lot of really late nights on that show, but I kind of like enjoyed the process of like digging in there, even though it was, kind of a tougher show. CSI was a great show that I cut my teeth on, like learning a lot. That's really what got my foot into the door, and where I met Narain Shankar, my mentor and the showrunner of The Expanse. We met 15 years ago on the CSI, the original one. And so that really kind of opened my eyes to what could be from the writing side of things and editing side of things. So that was fun.
Do you have a dream project you'd like to work on outside of The Expanse or anything you've done currently? Is there something, either an established franchise, or do you have like something that you've been kind of like plugging away at for your, grand?
For like my own project, or something that's already been out there?
Either or. If there's a project you've been working on, you got an idea you really want to do, or if there's an established thing you'd be really interested in working on.
Oh, well, I would love one of my favorite shows from the last couple of years is The Haunting of Hill House. And I love just the kind of genre horror, but very character driven and in like deep character work. And I gravitate towards shows like that with deep character work, but like in a fun, whether it's scary, whether it's fantasy, some sort of fun space, which I'm working on right now. Something new I'm just researching that's just like a character drama, but it's in, I don't know if I want to say what it is yet, but it's a different world sort of thing. So that sort of stuff. I like stuff with a real psychological thriller bent to it. Which there's actually quite a few things out right now that are like that. But
yeah. Have you found your preferred genre to work in has kind of shifted since you've done a lot of science fiction television, Almost Human, Grimm, which is fantasy, but like whatever. Have you found that your writing genre has kind of shifted into that era or area rather?
Yeah, well, I think it's always kind of been, I think more the hardcore science fiction, which is The Expanse.
Mm-hmm.
It's definitely shifted more. I have my brain kind of works in that way a little bit more than I think I'm surprised to say that would have ever before. But I still do think that I gravitate towards more the fantasy probably side of things too. Genre fantasy. Although it's been really fun learning so much about real space.
And how quiet it is. Dylan mentioned Grimm earlier. I love the show Grimm. I thought it was really cool. What got you involved with that show? Was it something that you loved that show and kind of reached out to them, or was it with your last people, or?
It was with Narain again. So Narain went on as one of the producers. I can't remember if he was a co-showrunner on it. And so I came over there with him, and I was his assistant there and did all the, like bunch of notes and work, was working my way through. I actually, when I was at Grimm working days, at Radford Studios, I was going to school at night for psychology because I was having my little roundabout existential crisis of, I have all these opportunities to write, but what if I fail and it's the only thing I've ever wanted to do? I'm just going to leave before I fail. So I was like, I'm going to be a psychologist. I always loved psychology, so why not? And so I went back to school and started doing that. And I was like, I'm, leaving, but I'm still have my day job. And of course, while I was working towards my master's, I kept writing, and I found that like confidence again of like, no, this is the only thing I really want to do, and I've got to put everything towards it. I've already failed if I don't try to do this. So I graduated, and then that was actually, we were at Almost Human. We went from Grimm to Almost Human, and then we got the Expanse right after that. And that's when I graduated and I was like, I'm ready to come in as writer's assistant. I want to write and get a script and move up. And that's kind of what happened after that. So, and the psychology has been great for writing characters. You can't go wrong with that. So
now, when as a writer on The Expanse, do you get to kind of plop around on set and stuff, or are you just kind of like just stuck back in the writer's room?
No, I got to go up to Toronto for, a couple months on end and was really lucky to be able to be on set writer for my episodes. We shot in blocks, so we'd shoot 2 episodes at once. So I'd be up there for the block of episodes and, learning a ton and being able to work with the directors and the actors and the whole process. So it was really a great experience. And I love Toronto. Such a great city. That's where we filmed The Expanse. So
yeah,
a lot of cool stuff filmed up there now.
Yeah. Did any of your environment or writing room or like processes change when Amazon acquired the show? Just out of curiosity, because it was originally on Sci-Fi Channel for 3 seasons, got canceled, and then the Save the Expanse campaign managed to get the attention of, I think, Bezos, probably. He's notorious for loving the book series.
Yeah.
So I'm just curious if like that acquisition changed anything behind the scenes. If
not
you can
so
say
much.
that.
Yeah, not so much in the writer's room itself. We had a pretty established team, but it did change in the sense where it felt like we just had much more. I don't know if it's also because of the campaign, but more support behind this. I don't know. And that could be also an influence from the campaign, from the fans. But they were we'd already kind of established the show and it was working and we had this fan base. And so they were really good about giving great notes, but letting us kind of stay on the course that we were going. And they have been great partners. Yeah. Sci-Fi was great too. It's just, we had the people who were our point people at Sci-Fi were great advocates of the show and loved the show. It was a different space.
Did you find that you had any sort of expanded freedom as far as like content or language or anything like that moving from a cable network onto a streaming service, which is obviously not beholden to various rating concerns? And obviously it changes because of Vasarala in the book is foul-mouthed beyond all compare, and you can see that start to appear in season 4. Was there any other kind of like freedoms you guys kind of enjoyed as far as writing content went?
Oh yeah, I forgot to mention that. Yes, so definitely the no F's given sort of stuff of Vasarala was a fun thing to be able to bring from the books that we couldn't do on Sci-Fi. We're not really a sex-driven show, so we didn't really, that wasn't really something that was a huge thing to show. But I think there was, just in terms of language and maybe a few butts.
Amos gets his starting in season 4. Yeah.
Yeah.
When walking around the set while working on The Expanse, did it ever like kind of come back to like, maybe I do want to be an actor, or did you ever try out for that show since you were so comfortable on that set? No.
No. I gave up the acting a long time ago. It's one of those things where I feel like I tried it out. I realized it wasn't for me, and I feel good that I know for sure. Like, it's not a question of, what if? So
yeah. Oh, that's funny. Yeah, when I was looking over your IMDb page yesterday, just doing a little bit of research, my partner looked over my shoulder and she saw your face and she's like, "Oh, that actor's in How I Met Your Mother." And I'm like, "Oh, you're right. That's cool. Yeah, right on. That's great."
She recognized me from that tiny little part.
Yeah. She
That's
loved
funny.
that show, which is
That's funny.
Really yeah, that's cool. Dylan, do you have any more questions for Miss Hallie Lambert? I'm sure you do.
I don't know.
Dylan's the writer of our group. I'm more of like the weird thinker and the talker. When it comes to sorry, go ahead.
No, it's just like, this is kind of like a personal question I'm curious about. Like, is there any sort of backstory or background information? Is there like a production Bible you guys have, or anything that's never going to see the light of day that you write just so you know kind of where a character might come from in a certain situation? Because
Definitely.
I'm a big advocate whenever Zach and I write. I'm like, we should give every character like a deep, dark secret that never comes up in the show, so that way they can kind of come from a place of inner turmoil.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, I know there are, for most shows, I think, have like show Bibles and character arcs written out. And I don't know about deep, dark secrets, but I agree with you. Like, it's personally, when I'm just working on my own projects or developing something, I often create a much deeper character or thought out character than will ever probably end up showing up on page, because I have to have an idea of where the character's coming from, where their lived experiences will have brought them and will take them in the future, and how they would react. So, some people might be fine without writing all that stuff, but I'm with you on that. I definitely need to have a well thought out character and world too, just to, if you're making up the world, if it's a fantasy world or if it's space or wherever. Yeah.
Yeah, one of the things that Dylan and I really focus a lot of our attention in writing on is like inclusivity and making sure that people sound real and are from the right point of view, which is why we try to engage with as many non-white dudes as we can, just to get more perspectives. How important was it on The Expanse with such, a range of actors on there, that the writing be like as important to like their dynamic as possible?
You mean as far as like the with the voices of? I'm not quite sure I understand the question.
Yeah, like if there are people from color, and I didn't know if that was important because it is in the future and it is in space. So I don't know if like Earth problems even come to like even the light of day. Did that ever come up? Like, do we have to go back to old school race relations, or is it about the future storytelling?
I see. Okay, so. Well, I mean, The Expanse is in the future, so we always bring our problems with us wherever we go, and no matter how far in the future, I think we can't ever run from them. But the interesting thing about The Expanse itself was it does speak of race relations and prejudices, but in the terms of Belters versus Earthers versus Martians. So we're not talking about skin color or, your ethnic background or your sexual orientation or whatever. It's brought into a different light, because in the future, we hope that we're all evolved enough to not be seeing that, but we still bring our prejudices with us between the Earthers, Martians. So it's just talked about in a different way, and it's just kind of moved over, which is one of the things that I like about writing is it words create worlds where we can, delve into anxieties and fears and hopes that are hard to articulate oftentimes in real forms. So it's a good place to do that.
Well, Ms. Lambert, I thank you so much. The Expanse is a beautiful show, and coming from my best friend Dylan, who is a writer, and he tells me weekly to hop into this show, I think you've done a phenomenal job, and hats off to you and your crew. It's such an interesting show.
I have one more question. It's an important one. Who determined the practicality of wearing high pompadours and mohawks and space helmets? Because everybody on the show has really tall hair, and they all wear space helmets, and I'm just like, come on. Also, how much weight is allocated to hair product on these ships? Very stylish.
Well, that's funny. I have to talk to the hair people and Lorraine about that. I'm not quite sure. I know, we try to have hair which we don't have to, either pulled back or in a do to where it's not going to have to be floating everywhere, because that's very expensive to do the floating hair and in space. So good question though, but
that makes sense. Aquaman, a lot of Aquaman's budget went to the underwater hair effects.
We had the opening scene, like the first opening scene in The Expanse is with her hair floating, and that was like the one. Okay, we're showing it off.
That's now. Let's try
to put the hair tight.
It's a fashionable show. I'm in. Hey, good question, Dylan. Right on.
Oh yeah, the important stuff.
Okay, Miss Hallie Lambert. So what we do now is we get into our content creation part. We used to just sit down in my living room and just blast out idea after idea. Problem is that we kept fighting over whose idea was cooler, which is why we decided to ask our guest to pick one for us, so we don't have our inner fighting anymore, because that was just too much for both of us. So what we're going to do is we're going to pitch you some ideas. Pretty please let us know which one you think we should work on, whether you think it's cooler or more interesting, or if you don't want to upset Dylan by picking his, which is fine. But Dylan, I think that mine won last week, so you get to go first this week.
All right. So I'm going to bring back one I've been talking about a little bit. Set in the future. Imagine that we discovered that when you're alive, you have like a pearl or something similar, like a calcified little deposit in your brain is kind of like serotonin and dopamine, and it contains memories, and you can kind of extract it if they're alive and use it as like a drug or something similar. And these people start showing up, and they're kind of like on autopilot. They have no memory or identity, and it turns out these people are harvesting this as like a black market luxury good. And we follow a guy as he kind of investigate what's going on with that. I don't know what to call. I think we're calling it Brain Pearl right now, but
I think I
hunting.
I labeled it Pearls of Wisdom.
Yeah, sure. No, like some sort of back alley, like, alley surgeon is extracting this from people somehow, and it's keeping them alive, but only kind of. And we follow the guy as he's hunting them down, that sort of thing.
Wait, so if they take the pearl, they lose their memory also? Oh, I didn't know that. That's cool.
Yeah, I think so. That's something new I had this week, just to make it more than just like, people got pearls in their brains, and if you take it out, it's bad.
And it's black market to put the pearl in somebody else's brain, so then they get the memories of that person. Is that what you're saying? Or
you definitely could. It becomes like a black market product. It would be like selling organs on like the private market.
So people want other people's memories.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
All right.
Okay, so the idea that I'm working on is I had this idea that aliens come here for whatever reason. I'm not really sure yet. And they look at us and they see that we are the predatory race. And they decide to force evolution on one other creature to kind of give us a run for our money. I think that they use this term called uplifting. Is that right, Dylan? Uplift?
That's what I've heard it referred to as. Yeah.
Yeah. So it would be they come down and force an evolution on a different species. I'm not really sure which one, probably some kind of cephalopod, but make it so that we are no longer the dominant species on this planet, mostly, I guess, for their entertainment or amusement. I guess that's kind of where I'm at.
All right. Kind of
like, about that?
Like Planet of the Apes, but instead of them being like science experiments, aliens come down and cause it.
Yeah.
But it's not apes. It's something cool.
No, not apes. No, something way cool.
We've got enough bipedal apes on this planet.
Yeah.
We need something else smarter.
Alligators.
Ooh, alligators. Cool. I like that.
I don't know why I just thought of alligators.
No, it's fine.
God. Intelligence alligators would be terrifying.
Yeah. I'm going to call it Gator Uplift for right now. We'll figure out where it's going to go from there. Okay, so Miss Hallie Lambert, very talented, very amazing Hallie Lambert. Please decide which one of these two weird projects we get to work on for the next couple minutes.
Why don't we go with, as much as I'm enjoying the idea of crazy gators, why don't we go with Pearls of Wisdom?
I love it. All right, excellent.
I'm curious to know more about these pearls.
Oh, me too. Me too. All right, cool. So we're going to spend the next couple minutes trying to figure out whatever project this is going to be. Real fast, I just want to thank some people that make this show possible. IBM TV, thank you very much for allowing us to come on here and chat and keep my whiteboard very filthy, which saves nothing but time. Thank you very much. I appreciate this, and so does Dylan. I know that we get to meet some amazing people like Hallie Lambert, which we could have never met unless we had a show, because why would she talk to us for no reason? That's just weird. Anyway, Scott Curtis behind the bits. We have some other great people on the East Coast, Sarah Tkachik, Tanya Sheck, and Listener app, one of the coolest, weirdest podcast apps. They like to make it so that you can read the words instead of listening to them, so you can save the jokes. Apparently, I slur or mumble a lot when I talk, and they thought this would be good for our fans, which is very weird. But either way, thank you very much. And Mick Manhattan over at Scene Snobs, great stuff going on over there. I'm just interested in this brain pearl, Dylan. I don't know how to. I'm really curious what this is going to turn into. Okay,
yeah.
So
me neither. I don't know what it is.
No,
Anyway.
It's okay. So you're seeing like a futuristic noir style thing where people are taking this pearl out of people's heads, I guess safely or not so safely. I'm not really sure. And now, what do other people want with memories? Or is it the emotion from it or the knowledge from it?
So, with the idea that we're still kind of discovering stuff about the human body, and I work in a grocery store, which is kind of specialty, so I get a lot of my coworkers talking about like the gut biome and that sort of thing, which is still a pretty new kind of theory for the human body. I was thinking, like, what if there was like a place in the brain where we calcified and stored either like concentrated memory or serotonin, whatever else. And the reason we haven't found it is like maybe when you die, it dissolves or something like that, or it's really sensitive, so you can't really go in and remove it. And then some amoral, I don't know, we do a lot of big pharma stuff, so some amoral doctor or something discovers a way to do that, to extract it, but it causes some sort of like really messy secondary effects on people, some really bad side effects. And at that point, society probably outlaws using it recreationally, because if it's coming from people, you don't want to incentivize that. And so this would be the story of like maybe people in a town are starting to show up, but they're like showing signs of like lobotomy or something like that. We do kind of be a little dark, but
yeah.
Turns out every one of them has like a scar in the back of their head or something like that where it was extracted.
Right, but my question is, why do other people want this thing? Are they doing it like a drug? Do they get what do they get out of this? What is the desire for the pearl?
Let's say like the novelty of it. Just like, yeah, I've got a human brain pearl in my possession that hasn't been dissolved, and they have it on, rich person has it on display or something like that. Or let's say you like either dissolve it in a drink and you can drink it and you experience someone's memories. So there's like a secondary market for memory experience, something along those lines.
Miss Lambert, do you think it's interesting to have this thing being taken as an emotional drug, a knowledge-based system, or a trophy?
I think more of a knowledge or emotional sort of that people get something out of it.
Yeah. I like the idea of it. Sorry, go ahead.
I would imagine if once you take it out, that you can't form any new memories then, right? So the person is kind of lobotomized, and because the memory card is gone.
Either that, or they need to like accrete a new one. Like it starts building up, like it's got nowhere to go, so it just starts building a new one. But effectively it kind of like excises the personality and humanity from these people.
It's interesting. It kind of, in a roundabout way, is reminding me a little bit of Dollhouse. Did you guys ever watch Dollhouse?
That's the
Joss Whedon. Yeah. It was people, their memories and their personality, everything was taken out, and then other people's memories could be put in, and then they could go and kick ass or whatever. But anyway, it's kind of reminiscent a little bit of Dollhouse.
I like the idea of it being knowledge or emotion based, where say you take like an inventor's thing, and you have like their inventor knowledge. But I also like the idea of the emotional attachment to it, like where if you could somehow extract like just straight happiness from a very like maybe a very wealthy person that has affluence, and be like, oh, I wonder what affluence tastes like or whatever. So Dylan, why don't you go ahead and pick one of these, and we'll just start kind of churning out how this story is going to go.
I mean, depending on how it's processed, I don't see why it couldn't be any of them. Maybe if it's raw, maybe if you just have it just untreated, it's just this unfiltered kind of mess of a person coming through your like mind, but you can treat it in certain whatever sci-fi technique you have to like you isolate the emotional chemicals from it, or you isolate the built up experience, and so that way you get the knowledge of it or something like that.
Yeah, I like all that. Okay, so when so Miss Lambert, oh, go ahead, Dylan.
I think she had something.
Oh,
I was just gonna say, or if there were like someone brought up, or like a rich person like that experience, but then they probably also have maybe like or like numbers for their bank accounts, or things that they could, you could a heist in there somewhere too. I don't know.
I like that. Heist knowledge.
Or secret information that only that person knows. There could be, there's a whole host of things that could be, but I know that's kind of going in the other direction, but
it's an idea.
Really.
I'm gonna take that idea of like a knowledge heist and use it on a later episode.
I do like knowledge heist. I think it's cool. Okay, so Miss Lambert, when you're writing a story, how important is it to build a window character into this?
A window character, like, I don't know that term.
Well, a lot of times Dylan and I, when we write universes or worlds, it is kind of a different world. So you would need some rule structuring, or you would need to let people know, like, hey, how does this world work? And that's when they usually have the window character that's brand new to the world for whatever reason. That way you can explain a lot of stuff to that person and not seem weird.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. Do you think that that's important, or do you think that's dumbing down to the audience?
I think it would depend. It depends on a number of things, but I'm of the mind that I don't like to dumb down for the audience, that they can kind of figure it out as they go along, that the audience, I like to think they're smart. People are a lot smarter than I think a lot of shows make them out to be.
Yeah,
and
I completely agree.
Part of the things that I like when I watch a television show is like, I might not totally be 100% up to speed, but I'm figuring it out, and I like that process of figuring it out. So I understand the need for them in some instances for little things here and there, but I don't think they're always necessary.
Yeah, no, I agree. Dylan, what character do you kind of want to follow throughout this entire thing? Are we following the doctor? Are we following the person who steals it? Or are we following somebody who's about to lose their pearl?
My first instinct is to go with the guy who's like hunting down the criminals, do it as like, and I am pulling a little bit from the Expanse, but like a privatized, like either a privatized security guy who serves as like a cop in the setting. Because if we're setting it in like the near future, you've got the privatization of police forces and that sort of thing you could touch on. Or I kind of like the idea that they like pull on a doctor or surgeon as a consultant, or like a neurologist, and they pull them into this case as like we need someone who knows how the human brain works, because someone is going in and taking this from people. And then of course you have the point of view character of the bad guy. You do the Law and Order Criminal Intent thing where you show the bad guy's point of view.
Okay, so we're probably got to start this with having somebody lose this brain pearl that's a big deal, right? And that's how we learn about all this. Who is the person that is going to lose this thing that sparks this specific story? Are they like I like them having like Cayman Island information. I like them having maybe even heist. I like the heist idea. I think that's pretty cool. Go ahead.
They are the wealthy socialite heir to like a banking fortune who recently like took over a CEO, but is still partying really hard. So that way they have an excuse to be like out at night and get ambushed or something. And they have all the contacts for their mega corporation business, whatever they do. I'm seeing this as really like a cyberpunk style thing. Constant rain, lots of neon, pretty grungy, that sort of thing.
You love the rain.
I really do. We're not living in a cyberpunk heavy pop culture era right now, and I want to change that.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, okay. So we have this person who's the heir to a lot of money, and they lose their on the beginning. And it's when we meet, I'm assuming, this privatized police force or whatever this detective guy body is. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. And then where are we going to go from the beginning? So we have once we get the group coming in, we learn about the Pearl being missing, which is where we're going to get a lot of weird exposition about what Pearl does, what somebody would want it for. You get that weird just info dump. What story are we going with here? Where are we going from the police point of view?
Well, I just had a thought while you were saying that. What if it's the head of the private security company that runs this guy's security who pulls him in? And it's like, we got to get this figured out before the board meeting, because if they learn that the CEO's kid is now adrift, they're gonna have to dissolve and reform or something like that. So I'm seeing it. I mean, kind of pretty straightforward, kind of like crime investigation story.
Okay. Miss Lambert, so when you said you were a fan of like Nancy Drew and the mystery type novels. When you're writing a story that is a contained story, you have one thing, it's not a series. Your normal process of writing is that you kind of know where you're getting to, or do you kind of just start throwing things at it and start filling it in, or do you have like the bookends? Is that more important to you, and then getting from A to B?
Finding the bookends and kind of, I think knowing where you're going, where you want to end up is very important.
Yeah.
I kind of find my way there though as I go through. Some people are really big outliners and have pages and pages of outline specific detailed notes. I'm more of a very bullet point brief outliner who like knows the points I want to hit, and then kind of find my way there as I'm writing.
Yeah. So when inspiration does hit you, does it come in like are you more of like a character person that you want to tell this character's story, or do you have like this really weird scenario that you kind of gotta flesh it out with characters?
I'm a scenario like plot person, which is kind of funny because I love writing characters so much, and I find that within, but usually I come up with like the plot or the story idea first and then figure out who the characters are within that world.
Nice.
It's kind of hard. I'm working on something right now where it's like an ensemble character piece, and it's so strange because I'm like working on developing the characters first, and I'm like, well, wait, what is the plot? What is the story? I don't know what that is yet. It's very strange. Yeah. Backwards.
All right, Dylan. So we know that there's a person who is very high profile that now lost their pearl. We know that there is a privatized police force that is on the search for this pearl. Where are we going to get to towards the end? Like, this person's most likely not going to get this thing. Can you get the pearl put back inside you? Probably not, right?
Probably not. I think the guy's probably hired just to keep it from being used or falling into the wrong hands. Which it's already in the wrong hands. So they probably have a time limit. They're like, it's either going to get used really quick, or we know that it degrades within like 48, 72 hours, 2 to 3 days. We give them a real ticking clock on recovering this thing before it is either used or completely dissolves. I'm seeing this as kind of bleak, where it's like they probably prevent the information from getting into someone's hands, but along the way, it's like, it was just another, we went through all this stress, and for what? Now there's another guy in charge of this. The bad guys didn't really get caught. Because, the cyberpunk genre is kind of characterized by you can do your absolute best, and yet all you might do is just get to the next day. So I think we try and kind of make this into like almost like a Chinatown style sort of thing, where it's like, at the end it's like, well, he's the guy who did it. It's like, he didn't get the pearl, man. That's why you were hired. Let it go. Like, we never hired you to arrest the guy. We hired you to stop him from using it.
So you think it should end with like the pearl dissolves, nobody gets the information, stuff's still bad, but not as bad as it should be.
Potentially. What do you thinking?
I'm okay with that.
Hallie,
that sounds. Oh yeah.
No, that
laughing,
works.
yeah.
That poor guy. I want to see some of him too. Of like what happens when you lose this pearl. Is like, I'm blanking on the character's name from Twin Peaks. The most recent read. Did you guys see that at all? I can't remember his name. The lead who is like a zombie-fied and goes back home, and I'm totally blanking on the name, but he kind of reminds me of like that kind of a like guy. What the guy would be like after losing your memory or not really knowing who you are.
Yeah, and I would assume since he's not going to end the story good, that he can't be a good person, right? He's a bad dude.
I think he's more aloof than anything else. Like,
okay,
you have the amoral megacorporation as kind of like a staple of cyberpunk, but this kid is like never expected to be the leader of this world-spanning organization at like maybe he's like 22, like make him really young, so he's still interested in partying.
Is this something you think maybe his family would have done to him because he has knowledge he shouldn't have? Like, is that where we're going to go? Like, if the dad is in charge of the thing and it's like, my son knows too much stuff, I would rather have this business take over. Is that weird?
It could be like an uncle who's like, listen, Devin was never the best choice to run this.
Yeah.
Like, it's like in the face of this massive bureaucracy, like the individuality is not necessarily the most important thing. And then you've got that. This is coming across as really bleak, isn't it?
It's really dark, man.
Yeah, it's pretty dark. I've
had an interesting work-related week, so
yeah. Okay, Miss Lambert, when you're getting down to a story where you're like, this is getting kind of bleak, what are some things that you can do to kind of brighten the story up a little bit? Or say that you were working on something like this. What were some things that you would kind of pop into this?
It's been a while since we did something quite so dark. I will say that.
I'm in. I'm just still trying to wrap my head around the story.
There needs to be a silver lining.
Find some nugget of hope somehow. In this particular story, I don't have anything on the top of my head right now, unless, like you were saying, it could start growing back or something. But I kind of like not growing back. I kind of like, find some sort of, maybe in this guy's lost memories, even though he doesn't have memories, so I don't know how it would work, he finds who he is, or he finds out he grows up, or I don't know.
I totally understand what you're doing, because he either needs to be a bad person that ends up bad, or a fine person that ends up better. So I think,
or a lost person that ends up somewhere, like a lost person. He sounds like he's like a partier, lost, kind of doesn't really have any ambitions or goals, and just kind of an early 20-year-old who doesn't, have their space. And by the end, their arc is like they found what they're meant to do, or what they, some sort of direction.
Yeah. But do we like that this thing does not regrow? Because if so, then is he just always a zombie for the rest of his life?
Oh, there's another thing. But then that would just make him bad. I was going to say he could get someone else's memories, because you can put memory. Did we decide that you can put a memory in your? That's how you get the memories out, right? You put it in, plant it into another person's head.
There might be something you could. Yeah, sure. We haven't established that yet.
Although then you're taking memories away from the other person. So
yeah. So okay, he needs to be. I think that it makes sense that he's. Maybe at first he's a partier and you think that it's not that big of a deal, but he's actually like maybe a bad dude. I think that he needs to be a bad guy, and then he learns a lesson and becomes better at the end. But I think that it needs to be him losing this pearl is better for him somehow, but we learn some bad stuff about him so that he advances, right? Because if he's like this really super wealthy mid-20s person, he's probably done some pretty bad stuff.
Or he knows some really bad things that he's not reporting. So
yeah. All right, Dylan.
Yeah.
We got to push the story along here, pal.
Yeah.
So
No,
we have a guy that has knowledge and now no brain, and then we have an ending that is very bleak so far. What are we getting to?
I mean, we could definitely have it be the act of someone around him, and that person ultimately gets arrested for like whatever the charge is, or like, you know, somehow the villain who coordinated this comes out in a worse position.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. If it's an older family member or somebody in his, then it's like, okay, well, that's the bad guy. That's cool. I understand that. I can get to that.
Which, in that case, doesn't make it so that it's quite. If we paint the kid as a victim, then it's not quite so bleak. It's bleak, obviously, but it's not like if someone doesn't get away with it, then there's at least that catharsis behind like, well, bad stuff happened, but at least like we got it kind of like paid back.
I wonder.
I guess.
Okay, so if this happens in this world, if there's a lot of people that can have their brain pearl taken, there probably is a lot of people that are just wandering around like zombies, right?
I imagine there'd probably be like a care home. What if there is like some sort of neural therapy that's been developed for people who have had this, like, this is a crime that happens. So there's some sort of like neurotherapy that's been developed that can simulate it. And it's like, I mean, you're going to have some blank spots in your memory, but for the most part, you can operate at a standard like day-to-day capacity while you come in for your regular appointments. And he's rich, so he can afford it.
Yeah, so it's like an external memory.
It's like dialysis almost, but for your brain.
Oh,
that's form new memories.
You can start to form new memories, right?
Well, I like the if it's taken out, I imagine that the whatever process builds it up is probably still active. So I think it would probably just start to create a new one. It's just maybe you have memento disease until like you get a large enough one, and like you have to stop people from hiding all your pens.
I like memory dialysis. That's kind of interesting. Where like you would contact their family and be like, just give me everything you know about this person. We need to start flooding his memories back. Okay, so what do you think is in this memory pearl that the person who took it wants? Is it something specific or just a wide array of information?
I think they have to comb through it, but there's plenty of like sensitive corporate secrets in there. Like maybe he had just gotten briefed on like what the company was doing and that sort of thing. So that's why he was targeted now.
Okay. I'm into that. And now the person that's doing this, is this a deranged doctor? Is this I wrote up here a moral doctor. Is this like a gang that's doing this, or is this just like a white collar crime?
I mean, I'm a big fan of like back alley surgeons in this sort of like, you know, a criminal gang has like a guy who got kicked out of medical school for being a little too lax or a little too, you know, amoral, that sort of thing.
Who paid this back alley pearl doctor to do this? How did they get Devin as the target?
I mean, I like the idea that it's like a family member who doesn't think that he should be in charge.
Okay.
I like that uncle idea you had.
Cool. I like that too. So an uncle who should be in charge, but isn't. And if Devin is no longer in the picture, then the uncle becomes in charge, right?
Yeah.
And he's got the information. He pays that back alley doctor guy to do this and make it look like it's just a normal run-of-the-mill drug pearl stealing situation. And what do we know about this privatized detective group, police company?
They're either on retainer for the corporation to deal with their private security matters, or they're like the whatever city this is set in, it's their contracted like police force or something like that. And of course they're kind of not owned by, but very much paid off by the kind of corporate whoever. Sorry, I'm looking up something right now because there was a law in Nevada passed in February or primed in February, which would allow technology companies to form their separate local governments. Like they would effectively operate as a technology county. It would be a county run by whatever company established that zoning.
Oh, wow.
So that's kind of what I was inspired by on this.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this company now probably is paying like a privatized organization to find out what happened to this thing because it is high profile, high security, and it turns out that it's the uncle in charge. What are some beats that we're going to get through in this thing?
Let's see. So I'm seeing. I think we open up with everything kind of like we either see the kid get snatched after he's partying, or somehow you have him and his paramour, whoever that is, kind of walking down the street outside a club or something, and he gets picked up and vanishes, and then shows back up, but he's drifting. He's listless.
Mm-hmm.
We see the security guy or the neurologist, whoever the main character is. We see them in their kind of standard world, and then they're interrupted by either like a memo on whatever phones look like in this future, or someone comes and gets them and is like, hey, Megacorp #1 needs you in their office, or like the boss is calling you, like you need to come into the precinct to talk about this. It's like, all right, what? It's like, someone lifted Devin. He goes, Devin? Yeah, someone lifted the new CEO or CFO or whatever position he's filling in. And it's like, what do you mean lifted? It's like, well, I mean, if you're a neurologist, and he uses some sci-fi jargon or something to describe it, and it's like, oh. And we see the horror that people react to that with. And then start hunting down leads, whatever those may be.
Miss Lambert, when writing a story, one of the things that Dylan and I kind of go over and discuss is certain structural bits that you go through, whether it's a 3-arc structure or a 2-arc structure. Do you have like a go-to, or do you just kind of let this, like, do you always try to make sure that you have a 3-arc structure? Is that a smart thing to work on?
I think when you're starting out and you are learning storytelling and writing, I think it's a good thing to keep in mind. But personally, I just I think I've watched enough and read enough and read enough scripts, and just I go by the feel, and it usually, or just my gut, and it usually ends up with I write TV. I haven't written a movie since I was in my 20s, but it usually has a five acts, about structure, 5, 6, depending. It kind of flows that way naturally.
And is that per episode? You would try to hit like a 5 arc structure per episode, or is that for the full season?
No, that's per episode.
Oh, okay, cool. Oh,
yeah. And most of oh, go ahead. Usually it's like 5 and a teaser, or 6, or it depends on the show, really. And nowadays with so much streaming, you don't have the commercial breaks. So a lot of it's just kind of flows together, and they're not even like really structured acts at all.
Yeah.
I think it's Star Trek that's really notorious for doing like a 4-act structure over each of their episodes. Like you can really go in and kind of point out where each bit goes. Because like you said, with back on TV, it was easier with commercial breaks.
Yes, it's very structured that way. You have to have your out and your in, and very specific. Yeah, and some are 4. It depends on the show.
Do you watch a lot of television currently?
I do not. I've been watching a lot of documentaries recently, because that's what my boyfriend has been really wanting to watch. And but I do watch more TV than movies. Yeah.
Is there a show that you go to that you want to kind of turn your brain off? As a writer, I'm assuming a lot of your time is spent like, I got to create this thing. And then you probably put on like something to just say, I don't want to think about this. Is that what is that for you?
They're usually like, I call them folding laundry shows. And they're very structured. I think one of mine used to be like Castle, or which are fun, but they're like, especially as a writer, from like the opening scene, you're like, I know who did it. I know, like, so you kind of go know who did it if you watch enough of them and you write enough. You kind of, but it's still a fun show to watch. The banter and everything. So that was, shows like that are very procedurals or structured in the kind of the same every episode, or like some reality television. Sometimes I'll watch that to turn my brain off.
Yeah, that's
not a lot, but a little bit. Yeah.
Oh, I'm a reality TV junkie. Like if I'm watching anything, I have to try to figure out what's going to happen. If it's a sci-fi, I give like 3 different, like, this is probably going to happen, or this or this. But if I put on a reality show, I'm like, these people are so stupid. and I literally just do not think about anything, and I consume it, and I love it. Oh, that's interesting. But yeah, I'm kind of the same way. I like the folding laundry shows. That's cool. Dylan, what's your folding laundry show right now?
Right now? Man, I don't know.
Well, okay, Miss Lambert, here's a question for you while Dylan's thinking of television. When you have, so Dylan and I have a lot of ideas. I send Dylan text messages constantly all week long of weird ideas all the time. Some are just not good, and that's fair, but I like them and I want to explore them. When you get to an idea that you maybe have worked on a little bit, and you're like, I don't know if this is a good idea. What do you do with it? Do you throw it away, or do you just back burner it until you can put something else into it? Or has that never happened to you and you are way better than me?
No, it happens all the time. I think I actually have one right now that's kind of really that space. And I have a writer's group. I think the writer's groups are really, can be really helpful in that too. I had this vomit draft that I just wrote, and I'm just kind of reworked it a little bit, but I'm like, I don't know if this is going to work or not, or if this is just silly. And so I'm thinking I'm going to give it to my writers group and say, so is there anything here, or am I just being crazy? Should I put it to the side, and kind of get some feedback that way? Because sometimes you're so close to it, you don't know.
Yeah. I often have that problem where I'm like, I don't know if this is its own idea or if this is just a character beat in a way better story. And I constantly fight with that. I'm like, maybe that's why I give it to Dylan. Dylan, obviously he went to college. He knows how to write way better than I do. So I'm like, is this something? I have no idea, dude. I don't know. And he always says no. And then he steals my ideas. So it usually is something.
Or they can be asking you the right questions about, I kind of like it, but what's this and this and this? And it can actually spawn some more ideas. And you're like, that's what I could do with it.
Yeah.
So
yeah. That's cool. We need to get a writer's group, Dylan. That's a good idea.
Okay. Well, I was on Saturday mornings, and then I started having to work on Saturday mornings. So.
Oh, I'm sorry. He considers us filming a movie as work, so he keeps saying that he has to work, which is weird. Okay, Dylan. So we got to get to at least one of these plot points here. So what would you say is the first arc we want to get to just to start telling this stuff? Is it that we find out that the uncle did it, or that Devin has more knowledge than we knew about?
I think they bring in the surgeons who do it, and then the uncle, there's something that like triggers the detectives or neurologists kind of like brain a little bit, where they're like, wait a minute. The uncle just said something kind of self-incriminating, but the case is closed, so I can't do anything about it. And it's like, someone does kind of get away, but then someone also does pay for it. So you've got a little bit of catharsis with actually closing the case, while also not quite addressing the actual reason that it happened. And you've got the kid who's like on memory dialysis, so he's going to be okay. He's just going to be on assisted care for a long time. And so you've got the completion feeling of like, well, I found the guys who technically did it, but the guy who put them up to it is still out there. I like the red herring in investigative things. Maybe one of the kids' like friends that he parties with is like a recreational user of this thing. So they initially target him as like, well, yeah, but you've got a memory kick. So like, come on. Your dad runs a pharmacy company or something like that. You would know how to do this. He goes, I don't do that to people I know, and also I buy it off of people, so I'm on the up. Red herring done. I think a large portion of this is going to be him going after the actual people who performed the act and not the people who put him up to it.
Yeah. What would you say is the second arc that we want to get to on the way back down towards the end? That it was the uncle? Or that for some reason Devin had 2 brain pearls? That's probably stupid. That's dumb.
I like the idea that it's like... So what we could do is...
idea what you're going to say.
So what we could do is 2 separate kind of like... It's a misunderstanding. Devin's friend, whose dad is part of like a pharmaceutical thing, they were messing around with the idea of potentially developing a second one inside people's brains. Just completely unrelated to the theft of it. They were like, hey, we've got a procedure, and you know what it's like to have 2, like you can... One of them is where you store it, and one of them is where you retrieve it. Something along those lines. For some reason, there's a benefit to having 2 of them. And then, pure happenstance, Devin becomes the CEO or something, and the uncle's like, this kid's not fit to run it. So they extract one without realizing the second one is there, and then the uncle is like, that should have rendered him obsolete, and yet it didn't. So you've got the cat and mouse game of the uncle trying to be like, no, it's just a miracle he's still active. Is there anything in that, or do you feel like that's a little convoluted, or is that too kind of like...
I don't know. That sounds crazy.
Yeah. This is a crazy idea.
It is a crazy idea. I think that we bit off a little more we could chew with the story here.
Well, that's why we have our Tuesday shows.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Okay, so I think that we got to take some time and really focus on this thing because that just changed, I think, a lot of this. Okay, Miss Lambert, I just want to say thank you so much for taking any time whatsoever. You are super busy, you're super talented, and we're probably not worthy, but we appreciate you taking your time and just hanging out and answering a lot of Dylan's questions about his favorite show, The Expanse. That's so cool.
Thank you so much for having me, you guys. This has been a lot of fun. You guys are fun.
Is there any... Thank you very much. Is there anything you want to tell our viewers to go watch, or a website or something they can buy, or anything at all that could help you out whatsoever?
Well, watch The Expanse. No, I don't have anything to sell except for myself. Hi.
No, that's great. That's more than enough for us. That's great.
I don't have a book out. I don't have anything. I don't know.
No, that's totally fine. And I just wanted to give you the opportunity in case you wanted to just say, whatever. That's cool. Okay, friends, listen, we bit off a lot of a weird project here that we're going to take a little bit of time to kind of figure this out. But that has pretty much been our show. Thank you so much for hanging out with us and making another weird, obviously very weird project for some nobodies to work on. You can see how this thing is going to progress if you just go to our website, somenobodies.com, and you can see what Dylan is going to try to get me to do with Pearls of Wisdom.
I have something. We'll talk later.
Well, give it to me now. I want to hear it.
Okay. So,
I want to hear it.
So
yeah,
part of the mystery of the first half is that Devin is still cognizant. They're like, he had his brain pearl extracted and he's still here. Like, that's weird. And then partway through, you learn that he has a second one, and that's the impetus for the second arc, where it's like, what do you mean he has a second one?
I love
it. You learn it partway through. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm okay with it. I think that's probably the smartest way to go without this being aggressively bleak. But either way, yeah.
All right, now my own time.
Don't worry about it. We'll get it together, Dylan. Yeah, and like I said, if you want to check out this or any of our weird projects, you can always go to our website. We do have a Patreon if you want to help out and help us create some more weird stuff. You can go to patreon.com/somenobodies. Like I said earlier, we do have a movie that's in post-production. It's called Give Me Back. It's a weird little project that we created on this show. back in episode 4, I think. And you can check that at our all of our I don't know, whatever. You know what I'm going to say, guys. Listen, thank you so much for paying attention to us. I crave attention. I like it. I like when people look at me, and you guys look at me. So thank you very much. Thank you to Dylan, my very, very best friend, and one of the few people that can stand listening to me talk constantly. I do appreciate you. Thank you to IBM TV for giving me a platform and a link that I can click on to make sure that Dylan has to talk to me for at least 90 minutes every single week. So thank you so much for that. Mick Manhattan and Scene Snobs, you're awesome. We got 4 nominations. Just so you know, we are an award-nominated podcast now. Things are happening big for us, which is great. And I need to say, if my camera could bend down, I would get on my knees to say thank you so much, Miss Hallie Lambert. This has been a way bigger honor than you could ever understand. Dylan has been so excited about this for weeks, and when he had that little issue earlier, but whatever, no big deal. Thank you so much for being on here. I have been Zach. He's been Dylan. You have been great. Thank you so much. We'll see you next week. Bye.
Later. Take it easy out there, everybody.